All right, I am with a man that I met. I did not know you existed until the firm conference. And you are, well, I've had Jonathan Neville on, and you
Mhm.
know him. So I want you to take it from here. I don't have
Okay.
a bio on you, but I asked you to introduce yourself. And how did you and I get in contact with each other? And where does Jonathan Neville come into this?
Okay. So I'm like Jonathan, I'm an attorney. I lived most of my life in New York City and have only just fairly recently moved to
I
Salt Lake
knew
City.
it. I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I knew. I was just telling my wife. I said he reminds me of of a a Jew from the East Coast. He looks like a rabbi. Kind of looks like a rabbi. He even talks like a rabbi. Anyway, go ahead.
I have buried away here somewhere. I have a kepek I could
Are
put
you
that on.
Jewish?
No. So, but yeah, I give you asked a question, and actually that's relevant to my background. So, I'm a by ethnic background, I'm a Utah Mormon, but my family moved to New York when I was fairly young. So I grew up in New York in the suburbs, and then when I went to law school in New York and stayed there in Manhattan for the rest of my career. So when I was in school, in like junior high and high school, I was in a heavily Jewish parts of the New York suburbs, and so all my friends were Jewish, and then as a practicing lawyer in New York City, of course, the New York bar is very Jewish. So I've worked all my life with Jewish people. I've had them as friends, as neighbors. So
Well, I mean,
I
they
definitely.
probably just. I bet you there's been many Jews that just assumed you were also Jewish.
Oh yeah, I could pass. When I was in high school, I could pass. I mean, I wouldn't hide the fact. I mean, I wouldn't deny that I was a Mormon, and I would not try to hide it. But on the other hand, I wouldn't publicize it. So
Well,
I
you
hung
kind of
out,
fit right in because you seem like you're very inquisitive. You're very
right.
you probably just chatted along with the rest of them.
I hung out. My peer group were the smart Jewish kids. We were always in the same classes, and so they just assumed I was another Jewish kid until they found out otherwise.
then
Until
you
something came
you
up.
teach them. Well, I am of the house of Israel.
Yeah, we were these were these were sort of semi-religious, semi-secular Jews, upper middle class. So we didn't like really get into religion much. But I've been to a number of bar mitzvahs, and they invite me to their bar mitzvahs, and so I've certainly know the drill, going to temple to Jewish services and so forth. So yeah, I grew
Nice.
up with all that. Actually, it's interesting after I was in law practice in New York as an adult, I had a long association with a number of the kids I went to school with in high school. Like I said, they were sort of semi-religious, semi-secular, like many well-to-do, educated American Jews. But when I was in practicing law, I worked with a number of Orthodox Jews, and that was a very interesting experience. And the guy I worked with in particular had been friends with LDS students when he was in law school, and was very intrigued by it. So we would have religious discussions and compare notes and so forth.
That's interesting.
So yeah, no, I picked up a lot of the lore and some Yiddish and so forth over the years. So
Well, you
that's
definitely have the New York Jewish sound. You could live the Jews from the Bronx, or where is it, Brooklyn, or
well, they're both
yeah,
points of origin.
yeah,
Um,
where you walk down the sidewalk and the kids are playing out there, um and all the dads are walking around with big black hats and the
oh yeah,
locks.
I knew those people. I knew those
Yeah.
people.
Not to stay on the subject, it's very interesting, but it's funny how you say, not funny, very interesting and intriguing because uh, the man that you mentioned that had been good friends with Latter-day Saints, uh, it's because there's 6 million Jews in America, the United States, there's also about 6 million Latter-day Saints, approximately, give or take.
Yeah.
And about the same amount, well, there's a little bit less now of people that call themselves Jewish on the planet than there are Latter-day Saints, but we're almost very similar in numbers. And our cultures and our values and the way our mannerisms and the way that we think, the way we feel about rituals and covenant making are very similar. It's interesting.
Yeah, no, there's many points of contact that we could talk about, but
yeah, but we're not here to talk
about that. But there's definitely the thing is that most Mormons, excuse me, I like to use that term just for an abbreviation. The thing is, we don't live together, though. The concentrations of Jewish populations in the United States are not areas with a lot of Latter-day Saints, and the areas of concentration of most Latter-day Saints in the United States don't really have a lot of Jews that live there. So when there's contact, there's a lot of rapport and a lot of interest and a lot of similarities.
Yeah.
But there's also because we don't actually, for the most part, live together, just because of geography and how big the United States is. I think there's also sometimes some erroneous assumptions on both sides as to what's up really with the other religious group.
Yeah.
But that just makes for more interesting conversation.
Absolutely. Before I forget, brothers and sisters, if you are enjoying the content, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and ding the bell for notifications. Your support means the world to me and helps the channel grow. And hey, if you want to contribute to the program, I do prefer Venmo first, then Cash App, then PayPal, then Zelle. And I've got cool products. I got cool merch. That's all being designed. I get a percentage of it. And that's if you're interested. Remember, your comments are what keep this community thriving. So drop your thoughts below. And if you're feeling extra generous, consider becoming a YouTube member or sending a super thanks right there. The button's right below the screen during our videos. Now back to the topic. Okay, so today we're going to get into the last days.
Okay. And we'll talk about Jews.
Okay. Do you want to do a presentation style?
Yeah. Well, let me just quickly finish, because you asked also about my connections with Jonathan Neville. So in any event, that's my background. However, my family, after I went off to go to BYU for undergraduate, moved to Arizona. And in Arizona, they became acquainted with Jonathan and his family, who lived in Phoenix at the time. And so through my family connections, I met Jonathan. This is now decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
And we just kind of hit it off. We were both interested in the same sorts of things. We were both kind of entrepreneurs. We were lawyers. We were writers and so forth. So basically, I just known Jonathan for many years. And we would send each other our writing to vet and so forth. And but when I moved here to Utah, I became particularly interested in the issue that he was working on the translation of the Book of Mormon. So we have our first real actual, although we've been friends and we know each other's work for years and years and years.
Right.
Our first actual project together was we were co-authors on our book By Means of the Urim and Thummim about the translation of the Book of Mormon. So that we just
good book.
And so anyway, that's sort of how I connect with him, and he of course connected with you, and then so I knew who you were, and had started to watch your podcast, and then we just had the Firm Foundation conference here in Utah a few weeks ago, and got a chance to meet each other in person, and that's how we met.
Nice. Okay, here we go.
So what I'd like to talk about today is my presentation is called The Latter Days and the Coming Demographic Winter. So I have a little slide, a little PowerPoint and some slides just to kind of illustrate it. So you don't just have to look at my face yapping away. Okay, so I'd just like to for a few minutes here, kind of go through some stuff that I've been working on, which is the issue of demography, which is population. And I think I'm going to suggest here that this is an aspect of the latter days. We had been discussing before we started the recording, sort of how you had just had a podcast literally half hour ago that you posted with Rachel Patterson of the Woman in Priesthood podcast, where you're talking about how we shouldn't be distressed about the last days. That there are, there will be some tribulations, but that it's intended for the righteous to live through and live into the millennium. And I'd note that while in the New Testament, Christ does prophesy that there will be troubles in the last days. I think that our Protestant friends have kind of ramped up the action. In other words, we'll all talk about tribulations and raptures, which are of questionable biblical validity. Nonetheless, there's been a big focus on end times and all the horrible things that will happen and antichrists and so forth. I like to point out to people that if you read the book of Revelations, yes, it does talk about some tribulations that will happen at the end times, but people don't read through to the end of the book of Revelations because at the end of the book of Revelations, Christ comes and it's it's all beautiful and wonderful. So, I say, I'm not saying that the book of Revelations is not true, but you've got to read the whole thing, including reading through to the end. But nonetheless, we do know that there will be difficulties and challenges in the last days. And a lot of people think of those, I think, kind of influenced by two things. One, our Protestant friends who talk about raptures and tribulations and antichrists and stuff like that. They kind of give us the impression that it's kind of a conspiracy theory approach to the last days.
Yeah.
There'll be things that will happen that will be, horrible things. There'll be plagues and things like that we won't know about and that we won't control. Suddenly, all these terrible things will come down on us. And it's not helped either. And then that's sort of picked up on by the secular world, which of course loves to have books and movies about apocalyptic and post-apocalyptic and dystopian events and so forth. So that's even the secular culture has picked that up and ramped that up and so forth. So what I'd like to talk about here, though, is that all this stuff assumes, both on the secular side and on the Christian side, assumes that there's going to be horrible things happen that we won't know about, that we can't expect. They'll just kind of come crashing down on us from outer space like an asteroid or something, or like diseases that suddenly appear out of nowhere and so forth. I'm not saying those things couldn't happen, be part of the last days. I'm not a prophet, but I think that it's better if we kind of understand what's coming. And so the reason I'm interested in the issue of demography is that this is a tribulation in the last days that we know is coming for sure. So the term demographic winter refers to so anyway, I just would note here, since you just posted a interview with Rachel Patterson, that I'm not the only LDS person who's interested in this subject.
Oh no.
Rachel has in her podcast, Women in Priesthood, has actually done several episodes on this subject. So just give and I'm actually going to steal a couple of her slides, so I have to give a proper acknowledgement and shout out to her. But I just note that this is, this is an issue which LDS thinkers and commentators are starting to notice. I believe Greg Madsen over at Quick Media has done an episode on this also. So anyway, just a shout out and an acknowledgement that this is not, I'm not the only one who's
your brother. there's thousands of people that talk about it in the LDS community. You're not the only one.
Okay. All right. So now just some, so I'm going to kind of walk through here and kind of give some basic information. A lot of people may already be familiar with this, but, we're kind of trying to get a kind of a little orderly presentation on the subject. So we're going to be doing some charts here, but I think that, they're fairly not too complicated. So this is a chart is the United Nations. Now, the United Nations under counts this issue. In other words, the United Nations figures assume that things are going to be better than they actually are going to be. But nonetheless, they're the ones that produce all the official statistics, so we kind of have to go with them. So this chart is based on United Nations data, and it shows the future of the world's population. So you'll see that the left-hand side at the bottom has got the years, and you'll see it starts at 2025. And they predict that the world population is they estimate that there's about 8 billion people. They assume the population is going to go up to like 11 billion. You see the top of the little orange curve there. But then you notice it goes down. Now, the reason it's going to go down, and the United Nations underestimates this issue, but they acknowledge that it's real, is that the birth rate is collapsing. So if you look over on the right, that's TFR stands for total fertility rate. So the total fertility rate is the number of children each woman bears in her lifetime. So if the magic number, so to speak, is 2.1. In other words, if you want to keep your populations even, every woman has to have 2.1 children. And you might ask, well, how do you have a tenth of a child? And but this is aggregate averages, and that makes up for the fact that not all children survive, and not all women survive into childbearing years. So you've got to have a little bit more than 2 babies per woman average in order to compensate for that and keep a steady population.
Interesting.
So if you look at the side, so all these pretty little colored lines here represent different total fertility rates. So if you look at the little on the upper right-hand corner, you got a TFR of 1.8, TFR 1.66, TFR 1.2. And so those are total fertility rates. So if you'll notice, the little orange lines plummet a lot faster the lower the total fertility rate. So the very bottom line that's sort of reddish, that's assuming a fertility rate of only 1.2. In other words, every woman has only one child and change, so to speak.
Yeah.
And you remember, a woman has to have 2 children to keep the population stable, because somebody's got to cover the men. So you've got to have 2 to replace. Every couple has to have at least 2 children to replace themselves. So the figures here on the so these numbers, these curves, are based on the assumption that the total fertility rate is going to go below the replacement rate, which is 2.1. And in fact, so you see at the bottom, it's got, this goes way out. I mean, the UN doesn't show the population really starting to crash until like the end of the next century. But as I said, the United Nations statistics, nobody accepts them because they're way too optimistic. Most demographers assume, one, that the peak population is going to be only about 9 billion, and that we're going to hit that in a couple of decades. And so that even before the end of this century, we're going to be on this huge downward spiral, because the average, the total fertility rates are just going down and down and down and down. Okay.
Now, should I hold? Do I ask? Can I ask questions during this?
Questions. Yeah.
I've got 3 questions. One,
okay.
Do you think it's by design, by maybe a globalist design to drop the population? I know you mentioned something about conspiracy theory. I do believe in conspiracy fact as well. Mm-hmm. And then the other is, what does this? are you saying that the closer we get to the second coming of Jesus Christ, we're going to see a more decline?
Well, okay, so here's actually I should have made this clear at the
No, you're
first.
fine. You're fine. Go
Uh,
ahead.
the I this is I'm working on an article now, which discusses these issues, and I think kind of presents them in a way that people will find to be interesting. But it's intended for a non-LDS audience. My article that I'm working on.
Okay.
So this presentation is based on that research. So I'm assuming, so I'm kind of bracketing the whole issue of the second coming. In other words, I'm saying, look, but if I want to make clear to people, I believe that there will be the second coming. But since we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, we kind of have to take the world as it is until that happens. So what this is statistics that are about the world that we live in that are going to exist regardless of when the second coming occurs. I mean, this is happening without any, I mean, it may be that, there's factors underlying this that, we don't recognize yet. But these are hard numbers. These are things that are going to happen. And there are lots and lots and lots of non-LDS scholars, scientists, demographers who recognize that this is happening. National
Right.
government recognize that
Whether
this
they
is
believe in God or not. Right.
exactly. So this is all stuff that is, I mean, it's controversial because it's an issue that people don't like to talk about, but it's not controversial from a point of view of the science and learning. You can point to lots of experts that will say, yes, this is right. This is what's going on.
Has this happened in history?
Well, this chart is I can't kind of I got the years cut off, but if you look in this chart, on the lower left-hand corner, it says 200 AD. Do you see that down there? Did
Mm-hmm.
that show up? And it says we had 240 million people in the world, they estimate, and in 200 AD. And so basically the world population, so if you look at the bottom of the chart, you see the line's pretty flat. And what has happened right up until the 1800s is that the world's population it would grow and fall and grow and fall and grow and fall and grow and fall, and you would definitely have times when it fell. Like for example, during the 1300s, when the Black Death hit Europe and Asia, it's estimated that a third of humanity died.
Wow.
So we had these so there's been up and downs ever since humanity began. There's been plagues and wars and stuff like that. So historically, the average woman who could have children had more than two children. When you're a farmer, you kids are helpful. They're farm labor. So, and we look at the Bible, I mean, the women in the Bible
Right.
often had lots of kids,
Yeah. Children weren't just there to love and cherish. They were also a commodity. They were a tool. They were like tractors, and they were they were
yeah,
equipment.
and they were your old age pension.
Yeah.
They were, that's who
They
was
were going
going
to
to take
take
care of you
care of you when you were
when you're old.
old. Yeah.
So what we read in the Bible about, people being concerned, women who didn't have children, this was a great, terrible thing for them, like Sarah and Abraham's wife and so forth. So this is very important. So that was all of humanity. That's not just in the Bible. The Bible is just being accurate as to what all of humanity was about. So you'd have women would try to have as many children as they could, but they were offset by a lot of children would die. There would be famines. There would be wars. There would be plagues, and so forth. So the population stayed fairly flat, counterbalanced between women having as many children as they could, but then all these factors that would reduce the population. So if you look at the bottom here, the line is pretty flat for a very long time, and then suddenly it shoots up. And so that occurred beginning in the 1800s. It's estimated, I'm just remember these facts off the top of my head, But I think it's estimated that in 1800, the world had maybe 1 billion people, not even. And then with the Industrial Revolution and the development of um, expanded agriculture and expanded medical knowledge and expanded goods and services because of the Industrial Revolution, suddenly the world's population just soared. So you see this line here up to, and again, these are United Nations statistics, so they underestimate the problem. So if you look at this line here, you see suddenly it shoots up, and it has in 2022 that there were 8 billion people in the world, which was the
Right.
number previous screen. And then this shows it going up some more. And that's controversial because a lot of experts do not believe the United Nations is correct when they assume that it's going to go up some more. But even the United Nations agrees that this is the future. It's going to go up a little bit more, and then it is going to crash. So
Well, that should
you know,
make the globalist community happy. I mean, they
well,
depopulate. I always think of Saturday's Warriors. Remember that zero population is the answer, my friend.
exactly. That is I'll tell you a quick side anecdote. So, this issue is not at all isolated to the LDS community. There are many, many people who are very concerned about this issue. And in fact, there's a movement called the pro-natalist movement. These are people in favor of people having babies. And this is outside the LDS world. And there's this couple who are very active podcasters who kind of have appointed themselves the leaders of the pro-natalist movement. And
Well, we
they
know
are
that
very
Elon Musk, sorry, not to interrupt you, but Elon
no, no,
Musk talks about it all the time.
absolutely. Elon Musk is totally aware of this stuff, and you're right. He talks about it, and so this is something that's definitely in the broader discourse. But anyway, this couple, they are very interested in LDS in Mormons because of Mormons have traditionally had a large number of children. They seem to know a lot about the church and Latter Day Saints, and they've done a number of videos where they mention LDS people and so forth. And in one of them, they actually showed excerpts from the movie of Saturday's Warrior,
Ah,
and
ah,
they played that song on their podcast.
that's funny.
So no, that's very pertinent. That's very
If I
pertinent.
can add something here, my wife and I talk about this constantly. There's many preconceived ideas about population, right? And especially, I think I find it very arrogant that certain people in certain walks of life, especially people that are affluent and live in big cities, tend to project that feeling of congestion that they have maybe living in New York or Philadelphia or, LA, San
Tokyo.
Francisco. And they go, the world is just overpopulated because of the bad day they had in traffic that
Yeah.
morning or something. But if you look out and you're driving, people go, well, if this is the spirit world, Brigham Young said the spirit world is right here. How do all these spirits fit on this planet? Or how are we going to fit? You look out into the fields. I live in the country. There is
Mhm.
miles and miles and miles of nothing, nowhere.
Oh yeah. And if you drive around basically anywhere in the Western United States or the Midwestern United States, I mean, at least North America is a big empty
Yeah.
continent still. So it's definitely, you may make a very good point. But we'll come back to the issue of globalists and climate change. We're
Okay.
going to talk about that. But anyway, I'm just getting to the basics here. So here, the United Nations, which tends to be in denial about this issue of falling population, but even this is their chart, show that the population is going to run up a little bit more. It's not going to run up as far as this chart shows, but it'll run up a little bit more. And then, boom, it's going to crash. And now you see all the downward lines on the right side of this graph. And the different lines are basically, again, assuming different fertility rates. But as we'll mention, it's the steepest decline is the most likely decline because fertility rates are going down far faster than anyone has anticipated. So this is the curve that we're looking at for the last days, if you
Hmm.
will. We on the situation that we're going to be encountering in the last days. Okay, so this is okay. So again, this is the UN's numbers, which are tend to try to ignore the issue, but you can see here again, it's the left hand side of the graph is 1950, and then you see they got these nice solid lines that go through 2020, and then the dotted lines are projecting to 2100. In other words, the end of this century. And we can see again here, so the solid lines, those are hard numbers. Those are, pretty good data. And basically the different colors, it's kind of a little bit hard to see here, but these are different parts of the world. So the top line is Africa. The very bottom line is Europe, and the world is sort of in the middle of all these. But as you can see, all the fertility rates are going down. Uh, and the UN projects, now you notice the little dotted lines, which are the projections after 2020, they all flatten out, but there's no reason to think they're going to flatten out. That's a projection. That's a fantasy that the UN has made up because they don't want to panic people. But the fact is that these rates are going down much faster than this chart indicates, and there's no reason to think that they're going to flatten out. Um, the classic case that everyone looks at is South Korea, where you see on the left-hand side, you've got the number fertility rate, that's the number of children per woman. So you see at the top, it's got 6. And back in 1950, there was a number of places where you're getting that kind of fertility. But it goes down to 1, actually goes down to 0. And you notice the UN doesn't dare go below 1. But the fact is that these lines for several parts of the world, such as Europe and East Asia, are already below 1. Like South Korea, the fertility rate is 0.07 or 0.07. In other words, every South Korean woman on average has less than 1 baby. So in other words, there's
Wow.
just lots and lots of
And
uh,
even China is starting to plummet.
oh hugely. It's estimated that in the course of the rest of this century, China is going to lose half its population. In other words, if their population is about like 1.1, 1.2 billion right now, and a lot of people question that because the statistics from China are kind of, dicey. But the estimate is that if you go from if we're at that point now, that by the year 2100, there'll only be 500 or 600 million Chinese, which is still a lot, but having your population drop in half over the course of maybe just 40 or 50 years, that's pretty amazing. That's a huge thing, but that's what's projected for China. And the government, the Chinese government acknowledges this. The Communist Party, they're going crazy trying to get people to have babies. And so we'll discuss that in just a little bit. But so there's lots of world governments. This is, again, as I said, this is not some isolated little thing that only
Right.
LDS people talk about.
Right.
This is recognized throughout the world. Governments, the South Koreans, the Japanese, they have huge government programs. This is a matter of national policy. This is true in Europe. France and all of the European countries. They have active programs to try to encourage people to have babies. So this is recognized as Italy and so forth, because those countries, they're down to about 1 as a total fertility rate.
Oh.
In other words, they're about half of what they need to have to replace themselves. So this is not a fringe, shall we say, subject.
Well, we've been indoctrinated by
Overpopulation.
overpopulation. What would you say to people that say, well, this is probably what the Lord wants? Maybe there's less spirit children coming to earth, and hence, but then you think, well, wait a minute, no. that's not necessarily doctrinal because what about the millennium? We're going to have children then, you know?
Exactly. So, yeah, no, those are all good points.
Yeah.
All right. So now, so okay, now why does this matter? Again, I'm speaking now, speaking strictly from a secular point of view. This is why this is matters. So, in a country that has, a healthy population size that, where people are having at least 2 kids per family and you're maintaining your population, this is the natural um, uh, population distribution for a normal human society. So on the left hand, it's the age, and you're right, it is blurry. I don't know. I'll try to
It's okay.
fix
Good.
that. But on the age, on the left hand side, it's the age, and it goes 0, 5 by 5 year increments. So the bottom is little kids, 5, 10, 15 years old, and then it goes up to the top is 100. That's the peak. So so this is distribution of the population amongst different age groups. So when you have a normal, healthy, kind of growing human society where people are having babies, this is the normal population distribution. And the blue on the left is men, and the red on the right is women. So you've got pretty much equal amounts of men and women, and you've got lots of kids. And then, in the middle is your middle-aged people, your working adults, and your parents. And then, at the top are the elderly people who are starting to die. So the pyramid gets narrower at the top because, that's the people who are starting to die off. And you want to have lots of kids and so the population flows up through the pyramid. So in other words, the 5 year old this year is the 15-year-old 10 years from now, and is the 25-year-old 20 years from now, and so forth. So, this is a population where so the thing is, the bottom of the pyramid and the top of the pyramid, children and elderly and retired people, they're not economically productive, right?
Right.
So you need a nice, healthy middle that's the working adults who pay the taxes and who, run the economy and so forth. So you need to have a good, healthy middle in order to, for the society to generate the wealth and the income and so forth, so they can support the dependent people who are at the bottom and the top of the pyramid. So Israel, as we're going to come back to Israel in a little bit, but Israel has a high fertility rate. It's the highest fertility rate of any developed country. And so, with some variations, they have this pretty traditional, nice, healthy population pyramid. They call it a pyramid. So Israel has got this is what a normal human society's distribution of its population by age should look like. But this is China's current population distribution. And you can see looks way different than Israel's, which is kind of a nice normal how human societies are supposed to work. So in China, what happens is that right now, this is as of 2020, you see you got a real fat middle. So that's the working age population. But you see at the bottom, instead of it being a nice pyramid shape, it's I don't know what you call this shape, but the bottom is smaller than the middle, and the bottom are the children. So you see the there's a big indent in the bottom. That's when China had its one child policy,
Right.
and the number of children plummeted. Then they kind of ended the one child policy, and people started to have a few more kids, but not nearly as many as they used to have. So the middle of the pyramid, that's the Chinese people who were born, in the 1970s, 1980s, 1960s. and they're the working age adults. They're the ones who made China a big economic powerhouse. The reason China was able to become a big economic powerhouse is that they had this big population of working age adults to work in all the factories and so forth. But as you can see, these adults, they did not have a full number of children. One was because of the one child policy, because China got freaked out because they were afraid that there'd be too many people. But even now that China has officially stopped the one, in fact, now China, their propaganda is have 3 kids. But the point is that the society has now moved on to a point where these people don't want to have extra children. So the Chinese birth rate continues to be very small. And so what happens is you have to think of this as kind of a flowing, this is not a static thing. It flows from top to bottom, or from rather bottom to top. So this little narrow bottom, that's going to be the middle in 10 or 15 years. And there won't be, and so this is what China's population pyramids are projected to look like.
Interesting.
So the top is, and this is the reason there's a whole bunch of different charts, is that they're assuming different fertility rates.
Right.
But the top line is 2050 and the bottom line is 2035. And you can see now the pyramids are completely inverted. There's very small numbers of children, and you still got a sort of a fat middle of working age adults, but as it flows through, look at the difference between the bottom line, which is 2035, and the top set, which is 2050, in those 15 years. And this is like locked in. This isn't something that is speculative. These are projections, but they're projections based on the current fertility rate, current birth rates that are, as good as statistics as we can possibly have. And so if you compare the bottom line, which is 2035, and the top line, notice that in the 2050 on the top, that the pyramid is getting narrower and narrower, and the base of the pyramid is getting narrower and narrower, and it's getting more and more top heavy. So this is what happens when you have a below replacement fertility rate, is that the population pyramid becomes top heavy.
What are the numbers? I'm trying to figure out what the numbers are going up.
These are ages.
Those are ages. Okay.
So those are by, and again, it's the same scale as on the previous chart, where it's by 5-year increments. So the bottom are the babies. The next one is 5 years old. The next one is 10-year-olds. Next one is 15-year-olds. Next one is 20-year-olds, and so forth. And it goes up to 100. So you can see that what happens when you have, again, below replacement fertility rates, the pyramid gets more and more top heavy, so that you end up having more and more old people and fewer middle-aged people and fewer children. And it just continues to get worse and worse and worse and worse, because eventually the pyramid all flows to the top. So you have a society that's basically an upside down pyramid, where you have a lot of old people, very few middle-aged people, and no children. And you almost have an upside down pyramid is what happens.
Right. I have a question.
Yeah.
Just like Rachel's presentation where we talk about the childbirth, you can't reverse it.
Mm-hmm.
The second coming, you can't reverse it. Is this reversible? Or is this something we need to worry about if the Savior's coming in 2033? I'm just saying hypothetically. Is this something that will change with a righteous generation after the second coming?
So what happens is, again, this is we're setting aside for the moment the question of what will happen when the second coming comes. These are just hard numbers that exist in the world that we live in, that are going to be in place regardless of when the second coming happens. Now, obviously, when it happens, that will change everything up a lot. But until then, this is the world that we're dealing with. And it is recognized, again, by non-LDS people, national governments, and so forth. So what happens, of course, is when your population pyramid gets inverted, the cost of supporting your older and retired population, and all the rest of the so you have a smaller working age population, so that tends to depress your economy. There's fewer people working, so there's less economic activity. So the governments feel that they have to juice the economy by extra spending and so forth.
Right.
There's ever more spending that you have to put out on retirees and supporting retirees. Here in the United States, we do have Social Security and so forth, and there are pension. Every nation has, every developed nation has, pension programs of various sorts to support its elderly people. And so what's happened is this chart, if you look at the bottom, this is just 10 years. This is 2010 through 2020, or it goes to 2022. So it's 12
Wow.
years. This is the total gross public debt of all the nations in the world. So 10 years ago, they had $51 trillion in debt. Today, or as of a couple of years ago, they had that effectively doubled to almost $100 trillion in debt. And it's by now, it's definitely over $100 trillion in total public debt. So, and the economy has not grown anywhere near this level. So basically, the public debt of the world's nations has grown far faster than their economies have grown.
Yeah.
And this is before we start to have the real population crash. So anyway, so my point here is that you ask, what is the consequence of this? Well, once we get into the population going down, the backside of those curves I was showing in the earlier slides,
Mm-hmm.
and there's suddenly the number of okay, let's see, I think that's the next slide. There we go. So we have this growing debt and ever fewer people to pay the debt. So at the bottom so this is a little bit of a complicated chart. The bottom is the fertility rates. So it goes from 1, so you have only 1 child per woman, up to, on the right, is 2, where you're close to the replacement level of 2 children per woman. And then on the left is the number of workers, dependents for the number of workers. So in other words, you have right now, you see 200 at the top. So that means that there are 200 working people for every 100 dependents, people on Social Security, children, and so forth. And then what happens is that those ratios decline. The numbers go down as you move along the curve. So you have ever higher public debt and ever fewer people to pay it. So, for example, in Japan, in 1960, there were 7 working age adults working for every retired person. Today, that ratio is 2 to 1. In other words, today there's only 2 Japanese working workers for every retiree, and their fertility rate is 1.2. So they are, they're on the downward slide, and so the number of retired people eventually is going to be 1 to 1. It'll be less than 1 to 1. So what do you do when every working person has to pay, to use the United States example, where we have Social Security? What happens when
I don't think I'm going to get Social Security.
Exactly.
I mean, I remember when my grandparents got it when they were 55.
Mm-hmm.
I'm 53.
Mm-hmm.
It's like everything benefits the boomers. Sorry, no offense, but I'm a Gen Xer.
Yeah.
I was born in 71, but it seems like everything is being phased out because of this. And I was going to ask you, you're probably going to get into it. My audience gets so mad when I interrupt people, but I don't know why. I'm the host. I can do whatever I want. So if you guys don't like it,
sure.
Bye. No. Why? It's fascinating. It's intriguing that in spite of all the different cultures in the world, they're all declining in child rate
That's right. That's right.
and fertility rate.
That's right. Even in the high fertility areas like Africa, the
Africa.
fertility rates are still going down, down, down. I don't know if you remember the first chart I showed. It had Africa at the
Yeah.
top line, but its line was going down just like everybody else's, just a little bit slower than
Are
everybody
are
else's.
there other factors that have nothing to do with choice?
Well, I have a
We're
slide.
going to
We're
get
going to
into
get to
that.
that.
That's
We're
at
going to get to that.
that's the finale, right? At the
That's
end.
the finale.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, so we have this situation. So you raise Social Security, which is a very legitimate thing to raise. If I recall correctly, the current estimate is that the Social Security fund will run out, will be exhausted by 2036. Now, that doesn't mean that there won't be any Social Security. It just means that that's the point at which the money that the Social Security fund has in it will be less than the amount of payout that they'll have to do. So you might get a little bit of Social Security, but probably not much.
Mm.
And that's and those again, those are locked in numbers. Those are locked in numbers. Okay, so we have this low fertility rate all throughout the world. Even in Africa, the rates are declining rapidly. But there is a big exception, which so I pointed out a couple slides ago. We had the population pyramid for Israel, which looked like a real pyramid and was nice and healthy. And that's because in Israel, they're still having babies. And the illustration I like to use is, who's the most famous Israeli in the world right now?
Benjamin Netanyahu.
Okay, after him. Think of entertainment.
Don't tell me. Don't tell. Seinfeld? No.
No. Israeli.
Oh, wait.
I'll give you a hint. Wonder Woman.
Linda Carter? No, that's not Wonder Woman. I don't watch superhero movies.
Oh, okay. All right. So anyway, these are pictures of Gal Gadot.
I don't have time to watch superhero movies.
That's right. You're busy.
So is this Wonder Woman?
This is Wonder Woman. This is the Israeli actress Gal Gadot.
Okay.
Who plays Wonder Woman, and she's a very successful actress.
My 17-year-old son would get along with you. He watches all that stuff.
Oh, okay, so your 17-year-old son would know who Gal Gadot is.
Yeah, he's into all that. Okay. And Guardians of the Galaxy and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so he would know who Gal Gadot is.
Yes.
Probably amongst the people who follow popular culture.
I said Linda Carter.
No, Linda Carter. He did Wonder Woman on the
I
TV.
loved Wonder Woman when I was a kid. Wonder Woman.
So anyway, there's been movies made of Wonder Woman since.
Yeah.
At least the first one
I've heard.
was hugely popular, and Gal Gadot here was the star of that. And
okay.
It made her career. She's hugely popular. But I'm using her as an illustration here because not only is she, she's kind of famous also because she got her started are you familiar with the Fast and Furious movies?
Yes.
Okay. So she got her start as an actress in the Fast and Furious movies. And one of the reasons they hired her, even though she was relatively unknown, was that she was in the Israeli army and they used her as a weapons training instructor. So, because she also was Miss Israel. So the Israelis, they were very smart. They have all these, instructional videos about how to put your UZ together and take it apart. Well, she would do them.
Interesting. Let me let my cat in. Hold on.
Sure.
She was meowing outside. Okay.
So anyways, she would, because she was a weapons instructor in the Israeli army, she knew all about weapons, which meant that they didn't have to teach her how to shoot guns and stuff like that in the Fast and Furious movies. So they hired her, and then she was very
interesting
in the movies, and then she got the Wonder Woman role and became world famous for that. But the reason that she's in this slide is because she is an Israeli, a very proud Israeli. She has 4 kids. Do you know of any other Hollywood actress who has 4 kids?
Well, yeah, they just don't talk about it. But it's not common.
No. I'm talking about women actors. It's not common. It's not known. There isn't any other prominent famous actress who has 4 kids.
Well, I mean, yeah, there's Brad Pitt's wife,
Angelina
ex-wife.
Jolie has she had 3 kids with him, but 2 of them are they're twins.
And what
So
about
she's
Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck? Don't they have kids?
they have 2
Okay,
at
but what you're
most.
saying is when you're getting into a family of 4 and above, like 5, like a traditional old family. That's
That's
what you
exactly
mean.
right.
Yeah, you
That's
don't. It's not happening.
that's right. So
Even
Israel,
amongst a lot of Latter-day Saints, well, except in Utah. Utah is probably the highest fertility rate in the United States. Huh?
we're going to
Okay,
get to that.
sorry.
We're going to get to that. So anyway, the point is that Israel stands out amongst developed countries. It has so as I said, replacement is 2.01, 2.1, and Israel, the overall total fertility rate is around 3, just below 3. So Israel alone, among all developed countries, has a healthy replacement fertility rate. And Gal Gadot, who's at least in popular culture the best known Israeli in the world, illustrates this because she has 4 kids here. So that's why we're showing her picture, to illustrate the fact that Israel has a high development. I mean, has a high fertility rate, but it's
Right.
not even. In other words, so this is a chart I ripped off. There's Rachel. I ripped this off of her presentation, um, and this shows the breakdown of Israeli births. And on the right is the fertility rate. So you see it goes from 2 to 8. But if you look at the lines, it's clear that the highest fertility rates are amongst Haredi Jews, which is the ultra Orthodox, and then religious who have a fertility rate of over 6, and then religious Jews who have the next line down, who have a fertility rate of around 4, and then you have the Muslims who actually have a declining fertility rate. Um, and secular Jews who aren't religious, they're down at the bottom, and they have just barely under 2, which is just barely the replacement rate. So the total is, you'll see, it's that kind of dark line, third from the bottom, and it is about 3. That's the
Everybody,
line that
welcome
ends at between 2 and 4. That's the average, but the average is clearly increased by the
back to
fact that
Buzzsprout
religious Jews
Conversations. I'm
and
here today.
Haredi or ultra Orthodox Jews have much higher birth rates than the rest of Israelis, and that's why Israel has this healthy population pyramid and a above a 3 uh, children per woman fertility rate. And so this has an impact. Again, this is Rachel for this slide. So what happens when
It's fair use. You're fine.
Okay. So what happens when one part of the population has lots of babies and other parts of the population don't? The part of the population that has the babies is going to increase. So this is a fascinating chart that shows projections of the Israelis, what's going to happen to the population of Israel
Right.
over the years. So the light blue line at the chart at the bottom is ultra Orthodox Jews. The kind of yellow color, gold color in the middle is the Arabs, and then the reddish color at the top are all the other non-Orthodox Jews. And you can see that over time here, the proportion of the population of Haredi or ultra Orthodox Jews is going to increase. So they'll go from being 7% of the population to half the population. That's just what happens when one group has babies and another group of people doesn't have babies. Now, in the United States, a good illustration of this is the Amish. Did you know that in the 1900 census, in 1900, so it's not like 1800 or 1700, just in 1900, the United States Census, there were 5,000 Amish in the United States, according to the 1900 United States Census. You know how many there are now?
How many?
400,000.
Wow.
So in just the course of 120 years, because the Amish have large families, they've gone from 5,000 to 400,000 in the United States. And this is just illustrating how this
Sounds
system.
like Mormons in Utah 150 years ago.
Exactly. So that's the next chart. So here are now using Utah as a stand-in for LDS is, it's problematic because, first of all, lots of LDS people live outside of Utah. And secondly, not everybody in Utah is LDS. But it's the closest we have because we don't really have good numbers for, active LDS. I mean, maybe the church has those numbers, but it doesn't release them, and nobody else really has them either. So you kind of have to use Utah as a stand-in for LDS. So this is a chart that shows the fertility rates of the red line at the top is Utah, and the kind of gray line at the bottom is the US in general. And it starts in 1960, at the height of the baby boom, and it runs through 2014. And you can see there's this clear pattern, which is that the Utah rate is always about one baby per family more than the national rate. And
Mm-hmm.
this is a long-term trend. And there are people who've done research on birth rates in the early, back to the early 1900s and so forth. And this is a pretty a solid pattern that holds up over a long period of time. Is that LDS people tend to have one more baby per family than the rest of the country, and so you can see that. But the critical thing here is that it tracks the national trend. So if you look at the left-hand side of this chart, which is the 1960s, you notice that the birth rate started to decline. This is after birth control pill was introduced. So during the 1960s, the U.S. rate declined, but so did the LDS rate. But it kept tracking one baby per family more than the U.S. rate, but it went down like the US rate did. So, there's some differences. Like in the 1970s, the Utah rate kind of separated a little bit from the rate for the country as a whole. But then by the end of the 1980s, it had come back to again where if you look in the middle of the chart, it's basically tracking the national trend with the Utah rate, however, being one baby per family more. So the national rate was, when the national rate was 1.87, the Utah rate was 2.65. And if you go out to the far end of the thing, which is 2014, the national rate is 1.86, which is now below replacement, and the Utah rate is 2.33, which is actually less than one baby per family more than the national rate. But at least it's really only slightly above replacement, which is 2.1.
I see.
So we're just going to go through real quick. Here's some more numbers that basically show the same thing. And again, you see, but this goes out to 2018. It's had a little bit more statistics in it. But again, you see this pattern where the Utah rate is always higher, but it tracks. So when the national rate goes down, the Utah rate goes down. And right now, as of 2018, even Utah, if you look at the very right side of the graph, the little dotted line in the middle is your 2.1, your magic 2.1. And you can see that in 2018, Utah actually dipped below the replacement level. And the United States was down to like 1.7. And it was really falling below the replacement level. Just I got one more chart here. This gets a little bit more granular. So this is a comparison. The bottom lines in gold are Utah. And you can see here, this goes out to 2020. So this is still a little bit more statistics. And you can see here that the Utah rate, and then this line right through the middle, that's your 2.1 replacement. And you can see that both the national U.S. Well, the Utah rates are now all below replacement. But this particular graph looked at two counties. It looked at the light blue lines at the top are Utah County, Provo, and the dark line in the middle is Bonneville County in Idaho, which is where Idaho Falls is, and it's so that's one of the counties in Idaho that's heavily LDS. So this was trying to separate out the LDS from the from the general population of Utah, because of course Utah is now not anywhere near majority LDS. So this chart picked out two heavily LDS counties in Utah, the Utah County, and in Idaho, Bonneville County, which is where Idaho Falls is. And you note here that again, they track the national, they're falling down.
Mm-hmm.
In 2004, they're up at 3, which is, 3 children per woman. But then it started to go down, just tracking the national average. And then at the bottom in 2020, they're now down. They're above replacement. They're above the solid line in the middle, but they're like 2.3, 2.4. So that's shows that while they're above replacement, they're not way above replacement, and they are not, so they're not. Let's put it this way: they're way below the 6.6 that ultra Orthodox Jews in Israel produce, even though.
Yeah.
So and you see just the curves just show you how they're tracking. All right, so that's my presentation to kind of lay out some of the statistics, the facts, and so forth that we're dealing with. So this is a chart. Now, this is like I'm working on this. So this is the what is it when they show a movie to a test audience before it's actually released? This is the you're
the pilot.
Right. This is the pilot. This is the test showing of this presentation. So anyway, I listed a bunch of reasons why this is happening, and I'm just going to run through them and explain why all of the solutions that people come up with don't work. Okay, obviously the first one is the pill. We saw that in the 1960s, after the birth control pill was developed, all the rates took a dive.
Really? Wow.
So that's one thing.
And wasn't there a time that the church frowned upon the pill?
It was the church used to be have much stricter policy about birth control. It never said don't ever use it, never ever ever. We were never as far as extreme as the Catholics, but the church definitely used to say, please don't restrict the number of children that you have and so forth. Whereas the current position is this is a decision for the family and the couple, and it should be prayerfully pursued. So anyway, so that's sort of the top reason, but it's not the reason though. It's not the sole reason that the birth rates are declining, because even though after the pill was introduced, there was a dip in fertility, it still was pretty, through the 1970s and 1980s, fertility rates were still, reasonably healthy and above replacement. So you can't put all the blame on the pill, is what I'm saying here. The real crash in the fertility rates did not occur until 20, 30 years after the pill was introduced in the 1960s. So you can't just say, oh, that was it. That was the cause. So here's a bunch of lists of what people say, reasons they give for why they can't have children. One is cost. It's just too expensive to raise a child. And not related to that is that the cost of childcare is too high. So what you have are, of course, two-income couples. The wife has a job. If you have a child, you've got to pay for childcare, and that's very expensive. So this is a very common reason that people give for not having children. The problem with this is that, so a lot of people say, oh, well, if we had free childcare, then people can have babies. But the problem with that is that countries that do have free childcare, like in Scandinavia, it doesn't affect the birth rate.
Yeah,
They
right.
still have low replacement birth rates. Another reason people point to is urbanization. This is the issue you raised a little bit earlier. Although there's still plenty of room on the planet, everybody moves into the cities. It's just and this is a universal phenomena. This is what happened in China. Everybody moved out of the country into the cities where they could get these better paying jobs and so forth. So you have this impression, like you were observing, that there's just no room. So, for example, uh, you can have a country like, for example, South Korea, where the population is falling. There's tons of room in South Korea, but everyone has moved to Seoul, where it costs, $5 million to have a decent sized apartment. And so people feel that they don't have room, even though the reason they don't have room is because they've all crowded into cities. But that's a universal phenomenon. That's across the world. In Africa, they're pouring into cities. In Latin America, they pour into cities. That's just is a function of our modern economy, is urbanization.
I notice maybe you're going to get into it, or is it on here? Well, would you say the climate danger falls in with the UN?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'll get to that. All right. So another related thing that people say is the career. Women are working, and the fall in birth rates. The thing that it correlates most closely with is education of women. So education of women is a good thing, right? But that also women pursue careers, and having children interferes with pursuing careers.
Right.
So a lot of women will point to careers as a thing. Now, often what happens is that women don't, so there are surveys up on this. A majority of women say, I want to have a child. I intend to have children. A majority of women still say, I intend to have children. But what happens is that they say, well, but I can't have them right away because I just graduated from college. I've just started my first job. I've got to get my career underway. So what happens is that there's delayed motherhood, and what happens is that women start thinking about having a child when they're in their 30s instead of when they're in their 20s, and of course by then in their 30s, their chances of having a child are decrease just biologically, and so what you have are what demographers call, this is a phenomena that demographers have identified. They call it unintentional childlessness. In other words, the woman says, she intended, she thought she was going to have kids, and then, but she puts it off, and then suddenly, or not suddenly, but then finds herself in a situation where either she simply can't have children, or she only can have one or two children. Whereas maybe she was thinking, it'd be nice to have three or four children.
Mm-hmm.
But then that can't happen when you're in your 40s, even if you do have a husband and all the rest of it. Now, and that gets us to the next thing, which women will say, is that they can't find a suitable partner. So they delay marriage. So the average age of marriage has gone up. It used to be 22. It's now 26 for women, and it was 24 for men, and now it's like 30 or 31 for men. This is average in the United States. So people are putting off forming families and finding partners. And then again, you reach a point a woman reaches a point in her 30s, even early 40s, where she says, well, okay, the clock's ticking, the famous, infamous clock, biological clock, but I can't find a decent guy. And I don't want to I don't want to be a single mom. I want my child to have a father.
And not to even get into this subject, but it's hard. The reasons why it's hard for some of these young people today is because they both have too high of expectations for each other.
Oh, yeah.
And we're seeing that today. And so they never end up getting in a relationship, right, not let alone college and goals.
That's right. So exactly right. And these are all big issues so this issue, part of the reason it's so fascinating to me is that it gets into so many other subjects. It's such a fundamental issue that it just kind of goes, into all kinds of other issues, national debts, how, finding a spouse,
right.
it just triggers all kinds of other issues. So next thing is that people will say, well, I can't have children because, and this is something you had raised earlier, because of climate change. I don't want to bring more people into the world because we're using up the planet and so forth. Now, one can debate that, but the point is that's an issue that is very much, and there are people who say, oh, well, I'm fine with the population collapsing because people are a fungus, they're a pest on the world, and it'd be better for
And
humanity to
those are,
disappear.
and you'll find that the zero population people are usually people that just tend to not like people in general,
That's
right?
right. That's and you get into a whole issue. They're anti-human.
Right.
They don't like people. They don't think people were a good thing to have happen to the earth. So that's a psychology that's very present, and that impacts a certain number of people. Then you have the what I call the dangerous world, where people say, well, it's not just the climate, but look, I mean, there's wars and there's crime, and the economy is, terrible. I can't get a decent job and so forth. This is a horrible, terrible world. It's full of bad things happening. Why would I want to bring a child into a dangerous world like this? I mean, again, I'm not saying I agree with that, but I'm just saying this is what people will say.
There's a comedian that talks about that. I don't know if you saw him. I gotta let you know. I might even put a clip of it right here. Just
Okay.
a quick clip when you said that, because he says the same thing, that he thinks it's ridiculous that he hears people say, well, I don't want to bring a dangerous, it's a dangerous world. And he said, yeah, it's so dangerous that with electricity and modern medicine and burglar alarms
there's plenty of food for
yeah,
everybody. For the first time in human history, there's
yeah.
plenty of food for everybody, and nobody's
Now I
there's no
can see a
reason for anybody to
pioneer
starve.
woman saying that on the planes, but not.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
a perfectly valid point. But nonetheless, this is what people say. Now, another thing that people don't necessarily give this as a reason, but again, the social scientists, and the demographers who study this point out that this is an issue, which is that as the birth rate falls, it's kind of a self-reinforcing cycle. So if you're if your siblings are having children, if your friends, your old friends from college are having children, if your cousins are having children, if your friends are having children that you hang out with, then it becomes kind of easier to have children yourself, because you
Right.
can say, well, if we go to a party, we won't be the only ones with a crying baby. There's going to be other people there with a crying baby. Or they'll say, oh, look, my cousin's baby is so cute. Wouldn't we like to have a cute baby like our, cousin Jane
But we're
or
dinks. Remember
Joe? But
that we're dinks. Remember that?
yeah, that's right. But what happens is that
That's dangerous to be a dink. It's not funny.
yeah. So what happens is, as fewer people have children, young couples, so assume that we've gotten past the issue of finding a suitable partner and you actually have couples, but if their friends aren't having babies, they tend then, it becomes harder for them to have babies. Nobody wants to go to a party and be the only one with a crying baby, right? But if other people have crying babies, oh, then, okay, you can deal with it. So just the example, as it's so self-reinforcing. The fewer people have children, the fewer people there are to be sort of examples of people having children amongst age, contemporaries, amongst people in the same age groups. So it's a self-reinforcing trend. When none of your friends that you went to college with are having kids, why would you want to have a kid and then stand out? And when you get together with your friends, you're the only one with the crying baby. That's so that it's a reinforcing trend, as there are fewer and fewer children. Um, uh, and then finally, uh, this is a lot of people are just saying, they call it child free. That is the terminology they use. I'm decided to be child free. And there are actually statistics and studies that people have done that say that you don't need to have children to be happy. In other words, lots of people just, they say, look, I know older couples don't have any children. They're fine. In fact, they get to go on lots of vacations and they can play and party instead of having to pay their kids college tuition and so forth. So this is and this is a movement. It's all over the internet. There's millions of examples of people who post saying I'm child free and this is why, and I'm proud to be child free. So there's now started to develop. I mean, I'm told that on TikTok there's this hugely tremendous popular TikTok or Instagram person who her whole TikTok Instagram thing is to list all the reasons why it's terrible to have children. And apparently there's hundreds of things on there, and she has millions of likes because this is what she does.
Well, the Georgia Guidestone said 300 million, 300 million.
Yeah.
But realistically, if they were to get their wish, that 300 million would end up, it would dissipate to nothing. Right?
Right.
If it was to stay that way.
That's right. So the thing is, this is dynamic. So, for example, the last item I think is very interesting, and now we'll get into a little bit of a gospel perspective. When we say you don't need children to be happy, so the question is that why you have kids? Just so you can be happy? Just so you personally can be happy?
Right.
Well,
it's a very selfish reason.
There you go. It's very selfish. And that is, so I would suggest the conclusion of this is that's why this phenomena is a tribulation of the last days.
Yeah.
It's because it's a whole bunch of the people in the world being selfish. And if that's not a tribulation of the last days, I don't know what is. We don't need to have, it could be that there will be famines and wars and things like that and plagues and so forth. But we don't need to have famines and wars and plagues for it to be the tribulations of the last days. We're creating the tribulations ourselves of as if the second coming doesn't happen soon, we're going to fall off that cliff, that population cliff, and we're going to end up in a world where our governments will go bankrupt, our economy will collapse,
mm-hmm.
and our economies will collapse, and there will be the world as we know it, which is completely based on a growing population, will begin to disappear.
I agree, and it seems like there was a time where having children was not like you said, it's because of a godless society, right? I don't know if we still have a lot of people that believe in God, but we've been indoctrinated to think, like you said, that the world is overpopulated.
Mm-hmm.
And even people that do believe in God still feel like it's and that it's a dangerous world. It's not any less or more dangerous than it was a long time ago. It's just that as you have more media attention to crimes, you're going to find out where all of those crimes are happening. We still had serial killers in the 1930s. We just didn't know who they were and where they were, and they didn't get caught most of the time, right? You just happened. And I always tell people that we used to, before cell phones and before all the amenities we have, we had God only. So there was a time where people had children, like you said, because they were a commodity. They were useful. You had to have help on a homestead, because there was a lot of homesteaders, and in the country, but
and you had to have them to look after you when you got old,
right? Especially during Manifest Destiny, the Gilded Age, from the post Civil War up until the turn of into the 20th century. But I always tell people, we used to just say, go with God. Godspeed. Why it didn't say, call me when you get there? Because there were no telephones. It was, I don't know when I'm ever going to see you again, son. I might not ever see you again.
Right.
But we trusted that we had children, and okay, it's a dangerous world, but who am I to say that God's children can't come to this earth? Also, we knew life was a risk. Life was a risk, okay? But we wouldn't have gotten to the promised land if we didn't take that trek and we knew some were going to die. What if everybody had that trigger mindset that they have today and went, I'm not going on the trek. My kids might die. I might die. Then nobody would have got to Utah. But we knew life was a risk. That's the difference between people today is they don't take risks. They just go, nope, it might be too dangerous. Oh, there's serial killers. There's people, there's gangbangers. There's this, there's diseases. I got to wear a mask because I don't want to die and da. Right?
Okay, so I was going to say, no, these are all good points. So as I indicated, or as this information indicated, Latter-day Saints are not immune from these factors that are bringing down the birth rates. And so, anyway, I would say that we have, but unlike everyone else, we have our faith in God, which you've just pointed out, that we take risks because we're confident that the Lord will see us through at the end. But we also have in our Latter-day Saint doctrine the idea of the preexistence and the making bodies for the spirits who are coming to this earth and so forth. Which now I would be interested in asking you this question. I used to, when I was younger, I heard that all the time. We have to, make, when we have a child, oh, I brought another spirit from the
Right.
preexistence and so forth. I don't know. Do you find that kind of, I mean, that doctrine is still, good doctrine.
I know what you're getting at.
But do you find that talked about as much in our current times as when you were younger?
No, I don't. And I think the reason is we, we've come to realize, especially with President Oaks, I say this almost on every podcast. We have theology and we have doctrine. They're two different things, right? We used to think that Bruce R. McConkie was doctrine. We now know that most of it,
book.
Right. But we know that he wrote it before he was even an apostle. He wrote it when he was younger.
Right.
And it's theology. A lot of it is theology. A lot of it's not doctrine. A lot of it is his interpretation of things. We find prophets and apostles, if you go throughout history, some believed, like James E. Talmage and I think it was J. Reuben Clark. I can't remember. Some believed that that we used to teach actually at one time, or you heard it a lot, that there was progression from one kingdom to the next in the next life. Now, some still believe that. Most of what we believe today is not that, though, because Bruce R. McConkie said that was doctrine of devils. But if you go back, there are people since the time of Joseph Smith, leaders of the church, that believed that and disagreed on that.
Right.
We don't know much about, like President Oak says, we don't know much about the post-mortal spirit world. And I think that could also go with the pre-mortal spirit world. I don't know how that's calculated, how many spirit children Heavenly Father has, how they are determined to come to this earth, if they go to other planets as well. We just don't know, right? How do you feel about it?
I'm kind of an elementary fundamental guy. In other words, I believe that there are still spirit children in waiting to come to earth. And until I'm told otherwise definitively and for sure, like the spirit world is empty, we're all done. You can stop making bodies.
Right.
Until that is officially declared, I work on the assumption that there are spirit children still that need to come to earth. But
do you feel that because the Holy Ghost tells you that, the Spirit?
Yeah, I mean this whole. It's Richard Bushman calls it the visions of the eternities. This is this whole doctrine that started with Joseph Smith, where we have this concept of the eternal journey. We are spirit children. Maybe we're intelligences before that. The earth is just a stopover on our way to this eternal a journey guided by our Father and our parents in heaven. This is so Richard Bushman came up with this term, visions of the eternities, to kind of describe this kind of aspect of the restored gospel. And I have a testimony of the visions of the eternities.
I do too.
I think that that's a powerful part of our gospel.
I think what I meant was we don't know all the nuances as far as as far as what determines all that. I'm not amongst the Elohim. I don't know.
Right.
And the angels in heaven. And I'm not, and I have a veil of forgetfulness. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to answer definitively what that means. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I understand.
But the Holy Ghost tells me the same as how you feel.
Right. That the basic concepts are true.
Yeah.
And speaking of veils of forgetfulness, I have veils of forgetfulness even from things I know in this life. So how can I ever hope to
intermittent veils of forgetfulness, right?
That's right. How can I hope to not have to get through the veil of forgetfulness from other lives?
Right.
I have
absolutely
in this life.
I do know that doctrinally, we do know that Joseph Smith taught that. I mean, that we lived before we came here. Mm-hmm. And that before even I was a spirit, I was an intelligence, and that I was organized, and that I'm, and that if Heavenly Father and Mother have spirit children, I don't know how they procreate or whatever, that I am one of their offspring. Mm-hmm. And even Christians knew whether because even regular Christians throughout time have debated when life ends and begins, whether it's at conception or whether it's at childbirth. They knew that it was a selfless act to have children. Mm-hmm. And going back to your question, and when in today's world, we almost look at it like having a pet or a plant, mm-hmm. right?
Absolutely.
Do you want a cat? Do you want a dog? Mm-hmm. Do you want a boy or do you want a girl? Mm-hmm. You know, it's designer planned.
A child becomes a lifestyle accessory.
Right. And that's not what we're supposed to do. Thank you so much. Oh, James, come back. We're going to talk about Emma Smith.
Looking forward to it.